Long live the king.
Kong Skull Island introduces us to an adolescent Kong, an orphan, the last of his kind, and it also sets up the reasoning behind how Kong would grow and become a match for Godzilla. Following Skull Island's release, we had the prequel comic, The Birth of Kong, which explains more of Kong's history and his tragic past. It also explains more about the Iwi, the humans that live on Skull Island, and their particular relation to Skull Island, the Kong superspecies, and it gives hints at how old Kong is, or does it? Now, I recently did a video detailing Kong's heartbreaking birth, where he witnessed his parents die at the hands of the Skullcrawlers. If you want to see that video, I will leave it linked in the description box down below. But during the research phase for that video, one thing crossed my mind. How old is Kong? How long have the Iwi been there? And does all of this explain how Kong will grow in real time? Now, the comic is actually supposed to be canon. And this video doesn't serve to just pull apart the comic and the timeline that they've established, but more so to take it on face value and to use that to theorize that actually it isn't going to be age that enables Kong's growth. No. If we run off the premise that this comic is in fact canon, we take it on face value, and they plotted out the timeline and they thought everything through, the age of Kong simply cannot be the reasoning for his growth when we then see him face off against Godzilla. Let me explain. In the comic, we see that the Kong species faced off against the Skullcrawlers millions of years ago. A statement that genuinely could hold up, if only in that flashback we didn't see Kong's parents there millions of years ago. Why do I say this? Because in the very next flashback, the time that we see the Iwi arrive on the island, and it's explained that the only survivors of the Skullcrawlers are the strongest, the biggest, Kong's parents. Now, if we take a look at the design of these two in particular, note the scar above the male's upper lip, the cuts and scarring on the female's arm, plus the cross scar over her chest area. These are the two same Kong from the millions of years ago flashback. Yet, they are alive when the Iwi first establish a settlement on the island, apparently. Now, let's take a look at real world, and again, I know this doesn't generally speaking always relate to the canon of a fictional universe, but the earliest recorded use of sailboats, the sailboats that we clearly see in this flashback, is 4000 BC. Now we know that the Kongs had a cave they were planning to nurse their child in, the orphan that would grow to be King Kong. Could it be the Kong superspecies, during certain periods of time, they have to hibernate, a method which theoretically could vastly extend their lifespan, similar to that of Godzilla? Potentially. In doing so, and seeing how the two survivors, the two strongest Kong, hadn't changed in size in millions of years, this would indicate that actually they don't grow at a normal human rate. When we then take a look at Kong, he would actually have to have been alive for a few thousand years if the timeline established in the comic is correct and accurate. But still only being a baby, an adolescent, and having growth to go, he is maturing at an exceptionally slow rate. So then, how do we explain a sudden growth spurt? Naturally. From when we last saw him in Skull Island to when we are due to see him again in Godzilla vs. Kong. We don't. We absolutely can't, judging by the timeline that's established. Now look, I know, I'm not stupid, this is only taking the comic as canon, which it is stated to be, and using it to establish a timeline. it does show that Kong ages at an incredibly slow rate. So I theorize that actually something must trigger Kong to grow into the king, to grow into his adult size, to be a match for Godzilla in terms of size, height, and physical prowess. Now, if we take a look back at the last time these two monsters clashed on screen, Kong was powered up, superpowered by electricity. Could this end up being the means to Kong's increased size? Maybe a nice little throwback, a nice little nod to the fans of the original? I think so. I think if we see what Legendary have been doing with the Monsterverse, having nice little Easter eggs here and there, nods for the fans to pick up on, whilst also keeping true to the new rules of the universe that they have established, I think potentially electricity could be the reason why Kong actually grows. If, and again, it's only if, they are using the timeline established in the comics as the canon to the universe. Which, in theory, it is supposed to be. It's supposed to flesh out the universe to be supplementary reading material for the fans. So realistically, Kong is a few thousand years old at the point that we see him, and he is still only a child, an adolescent. Which, when we see how his parents were 1,000,000 years old, at least, this would make sense. It fits to the lifespan that they have hinted at already. So both those things genuinely match up. The only thing which doesn't match up is then when we look at the supposed reason behind his growth from when we last saw him to when we are going to see him. Now, all of this does not make sense in real-world application. Of course, again, I know that, I'm not stupid. But when we take a look at the universe that they've established already, there is actually a precedent for this. So before everyone grabs their pitchforks and say I'm talking absolute nonsense, again, there's a precedent for this. We have Godzilla, millions of years old, Permian period years old. King Ghidorah, arguably older than Godzilla, he is dubbed Monster Zero. We have Mothra, and we've got Rodan. All of these creatures, these titans, these kaiju, are millions of years old. Yes, they have been slumbering from time to time or trapped, but they are that old, so there is a precedent for this. Now, I don't think it's much of a stretch to establish Kong as being this old, or at least his species and his lifespan having that age, and using the Hollow Earth theory in here, in this theory that I'm establishing, he may sleep from time to time, maybe just small bursts of hibernation, a means by which he prolongs his life and meets the natural lifespan he has. That's what I think. And then of course, there is the other view, that the comic didn't really take that much care when establishing the age of his parents. They may have embellished slightly. Well, I mean, not slightly, a lot. And Kong really is only a few years old. But again, that's the only way that this would make sense, if age is the determining factor in his growth. We last saw Kong in the 70s, and he will have only roughly 50 years of growth when he's been alive for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It just simply doesn't make any sense. Hence why I believe electricity could be the factor here. Maybe the eco-terrorists that are set to be in The King of the Monsters, maybe they are the reason that we see a Kong enlarged and grown, fed with electricity, enraged, blinded with it perhaps. And maybe that's even the reason that the battle takes place in the first place. Of course, we know that Godzilla versus Kong would have to have a reason for these two to face off against one another. Maybe Kong, forced to grow, powered up by eco-terrorists and some mad scientists almost. Maybe that's the reason why he chooses to face off against Godzilla. But that about wraps it up here for me and this theory video in the Monsterverse. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit subscribe. And if you want to stay up to date on everything that I upload here, smash that bell notification icon. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and a share. I've been Mr. H. Take care.